Have you ever noticed how some people can just make a glaring grammar mistake right in the middle of a story, but they still sound completely fluent?
Oh, absolutely. And then you have the exact opposite, right? People who use perfectly textbook vocabulary, but they somehow just sound so incredibly unsure of themselves.
Right, exactly. It is this huge disconnect. And that is exactly what we are getting into today. For you listening, we are pulling from this really fascinating script by Simple English Talks. It is called 10 Phrases That Make You Sound Confident, Not Just Correct.
Yeah, and it highlights such a vital distinction, in how we communicate. We tend to just assume that being technically correct and projecting confidence are like the same thing.
Right, they feel like they should be the same.
Exactly, but structurally, they're entirely different beasts. I mean, you can spend years memorizing vocabulary lists and perfecting your verb tenses, and then still completely freeze up when a real human being asks you a question at a coffee shop.
Oh, 100%. And that is kind of the core mission for this deep dive. We are essentially deconstructing that illusion of fluency.
Deconstructing the illusion, I like that.
Yeah, we really want to extract the exact conversational mechanics that bridge that gap between, passing a written grammar test and actually sounding naturally confident in a high-stakes conversation. Reading through these notes, honestly, it felt like uncovering the cheat codes to human interaction.
Cheat codes is a really good way to frame it.
Right. Just those little verbal maneuvers that native speakers rely on totally unconsciously to navigate, messy conversations.
Framing them as cheat codes is highly appropriate because before we even look at the specific phrases, the source forces us to confront this massive misconception that language learners carry around.
Oh, the idea that confidence is a reward.
Yeah, a prevailing belief is that confidence is this reward you get only once you finally stop making mistakes.
Yeah.
But the reality presented here is that confidence doesn't stem from a massive vocabulary.
No, not at all.
And it certainly doesn't require flawless grammar, which is a huge relief, honestly.
So if it is not knowing every single word in the dictionary, and it is not grammatical perfection, then what actually creates that aura of confidence?
Well, it comes down to flow.
Flow. Okay, break that down for me.
By flow, the source really just means the ability to keep moving. To not stop, to not panic, and to not freeze up when the words just don't come easily. They set up this brilliant comparison to illustrate it.
The two people at the networking event.
Yes, exactly. So picture person A. They're at this networking event, and they're using absolutely flawless grammar. Like every single tense is meticulously constructed.
Okay, sounds like a good thing on paper.
Right. But because they are mentally translating and checking every single rule before speaking, they pause agonizingly after every sentence. The delivery is incredibly slow.
Oh, I can picture that perfectly.
Yeah, and as a result, they project intense nervousness.
And the people listening to person A are probably feeling that tension too. I mean, you end up basically holding your breath, right? Just waiting for them to finish the sentence.
Exactly. That is exactly the intended effect of the example. Now consider person B in that same room. Person B drops a noticeably wrong preposition right out of the gate.
Just messes up right away.
Right away.
Yeah.
But they speak smoothly, they use natural phrasing, they smile, and most importantly, they just keep the story moving forward.
They don't dwell on it.
Exactly. So to the listener, person B sounds infinitely more confident, even though their transcript would be just covered in red ink.
Which totally reminds me of being out on a dance floor. Like, if you are dancing and you completely miss a step, maybe your footwork is a mess and you step on your partner's toe, but you just keep moving to the rhythm and kind of spin out of it, nobody in the crowd notices.
They really don't.
No, you just look like you are improvising.
Yeah.
But the second you stop entirely, you freeze, and you look down at your feet to try and fix your positioning, the illusion completely breaks. Everyone in the room knows you messed up.
Building on that dance floor analogy, the reason the crowd doesn't notice the misstep is that they don't know the choreography. They only feel the rhythm.
Oh, that is such a good point.
Right. The source points out a really deep psychological reality here. People feel your energy long before they process the literal meaning of your words.
So the vibe comes first.
Exactly. Confidence is a visceral feeling communicated through rhythm and momentum. If you maintain the conversational flow, the listener basically interprets that momentum as fluency.
It totally shifts the goalposts for anyone learning a language or even just trying to be a better public speaker. The source actually breaks this down into an equation, right? Confident English equals natural phrases plus flow plus courage.
Yes, and notice there isn't a single mention of a grammar textbook in that formula.
Right, which is wild. But I guess the courage part is just accepting that mistakes will happen.
Exactly. And the natural phrases are the tools you use to maintain that flow when those mistakes inevitably do occur.
Okay, let's get into those tools then, because keeping that rhythm going usually falls apart during the handoff.
Oh, the handoff is the worst part.
It really is that terrifying moment when the other person finishes speaking, the spotlight swings to you and your mind just goes totally blank. So how do we keep the ball in the air without freezing?
Well, you have to build a bridge between their thought and yours. Yeah. The source identifies a set of tools specifically for this gap, starting with what they call connection phrases.
Okay, connection phrases. What is a good example of that?
A prime example is simply saying, "That is a good point," or adding a slight variation like, "That is a good point, actually."
You know, I noticed when I use that phrase in my own life, it is almost selfish. Like I am using it to buy my brain a 2-second vacation to figure out what I actually want to say next.
Well, it serves multiple functions simultaneously, and buying time is definitely a major one. But from the listener's perspective, it doesn't sound selfish at all.
No.
Not at all. It shows that you were actively listening to them, which is incredibly flattering. You are validating their contribution before you pivot to your own, which just makes the whole interaction feel collaborative rather than competitive.
So it is like a tactical stall that doubles as a compliment. I love that. Now, another one the source mentions is "that makes sense," but I actually want to challenge this one a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, when I hear someone explaining a complex project and the listener just says, "That makes sense," isn't that just a slightly more polite, longer way of nodding and saying yes?
I mean, it might seem that way on the surface, but functionally, yes is often a conversational dead end.
A dead end.
Yeah, put yourself in the shoes of the person explaining that complex project. If you finish a 5-minute explanation of a massive new spreadsheet and your colleague just stares at you and says yes.
Okay, yeah, that is awkward.
Right, you have no idea if they actually internalize the information or if they're just desperately trying to get you to stop talking.
That is a highly relatable, slightly painful scenario. You honestly just assume they tuned out entirely.
Exactly. But when that colleague says, "That makes sense," they are actively signaling that their brain has processed your information. It acts as a bridge. It connects the data you just provided to whatever thought they were about to offer next. It keeps the dialogue alive.
So it shifts them from a passive receiver to an active participant. That makes a lot of sense, pun intended.
Nice one.
Thank you. And that actually brings us to a phrase the source highlights as a major energy shifter. Instead of just agreeing, you say, "I completely agree, and."
Yes, this one is huge. The extra commitment of the word completely adds immediate weight to your stance. But the true conversational leverage comes from the word "and."
It is funny because usually the instinct is to say, "I agree, but." Like we want to add our own nuance, so we immediately introduce a counterpoint.
Right. But the source is quite strict on this mechanic. The word "but" inherently creates contrast and, honestly, often conflict.
Even if you don't mean it to be combative?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if you don't mean it maliciously, using "but" subtly negates the sentence that came before it. It makes the other person feel like you were just waiting for your turn to correct them.
Which Ruby likes.
Nobody, conversely, and creates connection. It forces you to build on their foundation. You take their idea and you elevate it. Like, "I completely agree, and I think that is why we need to adjust the budget." You suddenly become a co-pilot.
You become a co-pilot. I love that phrasing. So we have successfully navigated the handoff. We have built a bridge. We are connected to the other speaker, and we have bought ourselves some precious time.
Yep, phase 1 complete.
But eventually, you do have to walk across that bridge and actually contribute your own thoughts. I know for a lot of people, especially in a second language or a high-pressure meeting, the default defense mechanism is to just play it safe.
Oh, definitely. Just smile, agree with the room, do not rock the boat.
Exactly. So how do we start injecting our own opinions without that paralyzing fear of saying the wrong thing?
Well, the source makes a deeply liberating observation here. Opinions cannot be factually wrong because they belong entirely to you.
Oh, wow. That is incredibly freeing.
It really is. You do not have to stress about being perfectly accurate when you're simply stating a preference or a perspective. And stepping up to share that perspective is what makes you sound engaged and authoritative.
Okay, so how do we ease into doing that?
They suggest starting with phrases like, "to be honest with you."
We hear "to be honest with you" all the time in casual conversation, but why does it project confidence?
because it operates as a signal that something rare and authentic is about to happen. I mean, think about it. In most social or corporate settings, interactions stay pretty surface level.
Yeah, lots of small talk.
Right. So when someone leans in and says, "to be honest with you," it automatically commands the space. The listener's brain unconsciously prepares for something valuable, maybe even a little vulnerable. It forces people to pay closer attention.
It functions almost like a verbal drum roll. You are basically telling the audience, settle down, focus in, the main event is about to start.
That is a perfect analogy.
Okay.
But expanding on that drum roll idea, think about what happens if a drummer plays a drum roll continuously for an entire 3-minute song.
Well, the audience stops caring immediately. It just becomes really annoying background noise.
Exactly. The psychological weight of "to be honest with you," or its slightly more formal cousin, "to be perfectly honest," relies entirely on contrast.
Which means if I am saying, honestly, speaking about the weather being nice, and then saying to be honest with you about my lunch being just okay, it completely loses its impact.
It just becomes a nervous filler phrase at that point. The source strongly advises saving these opinion markers for your most significant thoughts. They really require intentionality.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, there is another variation of this that I find really fascinating for handling tricky social situations, and that is the phrase, "if you ask me."
Oh, "if you ask me" is brilliant. It allows you to fully claim an opinion without coming across as aggressive or dictatorial.
How so?
Well, the source provides this highly relatable restaurant scenario. So imagine you are at a dinner party and someone asks for your thoughts on the meal. If you aren't enjoying it, a nervous speaker might just mumble, I don't know, maybe it's okay. What do you think?
Yeah, that lacks any conviction whatsoever.
But on the flip side, if you just bluntly say, "the food is terrible," you sound arrogant, and you might seriously offend whoever picked the restaurant.
Which is precisely the dilemma. You want to be honest, but you don't want to be a jerk.
Exactly. But if you deploy the phrase, "if you ask me, the food is quite good, but the service leaves a lot to be desired," you completely change the dynamic.
You soften the edges of the critique. You're acknowledging that this is just your personal lens, not the objective truth of the universe, which makes the opinion much easier for others to swallow. And yet you still sound incredibly decisive.
It demonstrates really high emotional intelligence. Now, you want to dial up the intensity and ownership even more. The source suggests, honestly speaking.
Honestly speaking, that sounds a bit heavier.
It is. It requires even more deliberate delivery than "to be honest with you." It indicates that you are about to share a deeply held, perhaps even controversial belief.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We've used our drum rolls sparingly. We've set up our deeply held belief. The spotlight is fully on us. We open our mouth to deliver this brilliant thought, and mid-sentence, our brain completely short-circuits.
Oh no.
The vocabulary vanishes, the grammar structure just collapses.
Right.
This is the universal nightmare that causes people to avoid speaking up in the first place.
It triggers an immediate physiological response. Cortisol spikes, the fight or flight instinct kicks in, and people tend to visibly panic.
I know we do.
But the crucial takeaway from the source here is that confident, fluent speakers do not possess some magical immunity to brain freezes. They just have a specialized toolkit for handling the freeze without breaking the flow.
And they call this the rescue kit.
Yes, the rescue kit.
I need this because my immediate instinct when I mess up a sentence is to panic, hit the brakes hard, and over-apologize. Sorry, I completely messed that up. My English is terrible today. Let me start over.
And that reaction is the conversational equivalent of taking a bright red marker and circling your mistake so everyone stares at it.
That is painfully accurate. It totally shatters the rhythm.
It does. So instead of apologizing, the source offers the ultimate recovery phrase, which is, "what I mean is."
What I mean is, it's essentially a conversational undo button.
That is the absolute perfect way to conceptualize it. If you are presenting a project update in a meeting and your sentence gets tangled into a confusing mess, you don't stop the meeting to apologize for your phrasing.
You just keep going.
Right. You just pause, say "what I mean is," and deliver a simpler version of the thought. It frames the clumsy first attempt as a rough draft rather than a failure.
Oh, I love that.
It signals to the room that the core idea is still valuable and you are committed to moving forward.
So you aren't failing, you are just editing out loud. That reframing takes so much pressure off. Another rescue tool they mention is, I was just thinking, how does this function when we get stuck?
So I was just thinking it's incredibly versatile. On a basic level, it buys you time while making you appear reflective rather than lost. But the source notes a secondary, really strategic use. It acts as a buffer for bold or contradictory ideas.
It's like wrapping a brick in a pillow.
Yes.
Like, if you are in that same business meeting and you realize your boss's strategy is absolutely going to fail, blurting out that won't work is a career-limiting move.
Highly unadvised.
Yeah. But if you start with, I was just thinking, maybe we need to consider how the client will react to this timeline. The weight of the warning is still there, but the impact is softened.
Exactly. It frames the contradiction as a collaborative exploration rather than a direct attack.
Which lowers the defensive shields of everyone in the room. Now, another phrase that really centers the listener's comfort is, let me put it this way. Yes. I feel like we use this when we can physically see the confusion on someone's face.
Oh, totally. When you sense you've lost your audience, the insecure response is to feel embarrassed and just kind of retreat. But the confident response is to take leadership of the moment.
Step into it.
Right. Saying, let me put it this way, politely resets the conversation. It carries a tremendous amount of empathy, essentially telling the listener, your understanding is important to me, so I am going to try a different angle.
It turns a moment of confusion into a moment of connection. That is brilliant. And the final phrase in the rescue kit is one the source claims is completely ubiquitous in native speech, which is, the thing is.
It is brilliant because of how incredibly simple it is. You use it to introduce the absolute heart of your argument. Like, the thing is, the timeline is just too tight.
But it also creates this tiny, highly engaging moment of suspense.
How so?
Well, when someone starts a sentence with, the thing is, your brain automatically goes on alert. You find yourself thinking, wait, what's the thing? Tell me the thing.
That is so true. It acts as an auditory hook. If someone's attention was drifting, that phrase pulls them right back into the present moment.
So if we look at the whole picture now, we have this robust toolkit. We have connection phrases to build bridges, opinion phrases to claim our space, and rescue phrases to hit the undo button when we stumble.
A very solid toolkit.
But having these tools in your back pocket can give you a false sense of security, right? Because if you deploy them the wrong way, they can completely backfire. Which brings us to the pitfalls.
Yes, the pitfalls. The source outlines 4 major mistakes people make once they learn these mechanics. We actually touched on the first one earlier, which is overusing a single phrase.
Right, it goes back to that piano analogy. You might learn to play a perfectly tuned middle C. It is a beautiful note. Let's say it is the phrase. That's a good point.
Okay.
But if you just hammer that exact same key 50 times in a row, you aren't making music anymore. You are just making a highly irritating noise. You sound like a customer service robot.
Yeah. The human ear detects patterns incredibly quickly. If you don't rotate your phrases, you lose all natural texture in your speech. Now, the second major pitfall is an issue of tone, specifically regarding the phrase, honestly speaking.
Honestly speaking, I mean, it is just 2 words. How badly can that really go wrong?
Well, it all comes down to the emotional delivery. If you deliver those 2 words sharply, with a hard drop in your voice like, honestly speaking, your data is flawed, it transforms from an opinion marker into a weapon.
Yikes. Yeah, that sounds aggressive.
It sounds combative and condescending. The phrase itself is structurally sound, but if the tone isn't softened and conversational, it alienates the listener immediately.
So you cannot use a drum roll to initiate an ambush.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. What about the third mistake? The source labels it agreeing, then disagreeing.
This is an incredibly common trap for language learners who just want to remain polite at all costs. They will use a connection phrase like, I completely agree, simply to smooth the transition.
Okay.
But then their very next sentence entirely contradicts the person they just agreed with. Like, I completely agree, but actually the opposite approach is better.
Oh, wow. That gives the listener intense conversational whiplash. It is a total bait and switch.
It actively damages your credibility. It signals to the other person that you aren't processing the literal meaning of the words, I agree. You are just using them as meaningless filler.
So what is the fix for that?
The source provides a very clean solution. If you plan to introduce a counter-argument, just swap out the phrase. Use I see your point instead.
Ah, I see your point. Because that validates their perspective. It proves you listened without formally committing you to their side of the argument. It is honest.
Very honest.
And what is the final pitfall?
It involves forgetting the critical, and we discussed earlier, the power of I completely agree, and relies entirely on the follow-through.
Oh, I can see where this is going.
Yeah, many learners will summon the courage to say, I completely agree, and then they just go totally silent.
They just drop the microphone and walk away from the interaction.
The source actually describes this as agreeing and disappearing. The word and is the hook that legally obligates you to add your own perspective. Without it, you aren't participating in a dialogue. You are just acting as an audience member, nodding along to someone else's monologue.
You have to step up and be the co-pilot.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Perhaps preparing for a meeting or a social event in a language you are still mastering?
I think the most profound takeaway from this deep dive is that you do not need to pause your life to memorize a massive new vocabulary in order to change the way people perceive you.
Absolutely not.
By utilizing connection phrases, leaning into opinion phrases, and keeping the rescue tools ready, you can actively manufacture flow. And by manufacturing flow, you manufacture presence.
And presence is universally recognized. When it comes down to it, real human conversation is just messy. It is full of slight imperfections, weird pauses, and spontaneous recoveries. Embracing that messiness and navigating it smoothly will always win over trying to deliver perfectly sterile textbook sentences. 100%. Every single time you speak up, even if the grammar is totally imperfect, you are making a tangible investment in your own confidence. I highly recommend practicing these mechanics out loud.
Yes, do not just analyze them in your head.
Right. Say them in the car on your commute. Say them while making coffee. Build the physical muscle memory in your jaw for phrases like, what I mean is, or the thing is, or to be honest with you.
Because when the adrenaline spikes and the panic sets in, your cognitive brain will lag behind. You need your mouth to just know the escape route automatically.
Which actually brings me to a final, slightly philosophical thought to chew on after this deep dive. We have talked extensively about how these phrases create the illusion of confidence for the listener. By refusing to freeze, and by using what I mean is as an undo button, you act like a fluent speaker. But if you continually perform these behaviors, does it eventually trick your own brain?
Oh, that is fascinating. It taps into the concept of embodied cognition. Like you are changing the physical behavior to alter the mental state.
Exactly. If you consistently use these tools to maintain the rhythm, does the performance eventually just become your reality? By forcing the flow, do you actually rewire your neural pathways to stop fearing the mistakes?
It is very possible.
Because if that is true, then maybe the goal isn't to perfectly fix the broken bones of our sentences every single time. Maybe the ultimate goal is just to keep dancing, trusting that a stumble isn't a failure, as long as you catch the beat on the next measure. Keep the music playing, use your rescue kit, and keep moving forward. Catch you on the next deep dive.